Hello and welcome to Three Things with JR. We've got a big show for you today. It's so big, we're not even going to have a commercial break in the middle of the show. That's right. I'm going to forego all of the, whatever money I would have gotten from the ad that plays in most of my episodes. It's not a lot of money. Don't think that I'm being too philanthropic here, but there's no reason to monetize this show at all. I simply want you to hear a wonderful interview with a good friend from my high school. And you actually may have heard him on a previous show. I interviewed John Worrell last year on the show when I was calling people out of the blue. I actually scheduled an interview with him. We talked for a good hour and a half. He told us so much about his life, and I really haven't interacted with him much since high school. You'll hear about it. We've gotten a little closer here in the last year, and he's got a lot to say about a lot of different things, including music and history and his family, his upbringing, how he became who he is today, his time in the military. I did not know he had any time in the military. We talk about playing games at our childhood homes. His mother, my mother. We talked about a ton of stuff here, and the main reason I don't even think monetizing or having an ad play in this episode, there's two. One, it's a really long interview. We don't need to add another minute to it. And two, the major update in John's life since we spoke last year is that he has been given a terminal diagnosis of cancer. And he is facing, maybe a shorter life than he had planned. And he has been taking this opportunity and he does kind of see it as an opportunity to put out there into the world who he is, especially for his kids. He recently purchased a bunch of podcasting gear, and he now has a setup actually fairly similar to mine. And he is recording interviews with people from his life. And he wants to put it out there and basically hang out and record it and, put out there into the world who John is so that his kids and anybody can know John. He calls it Knowing John. And he's actually got a Patreon for it. He's not begging for donations. If you want to donate, you absolutely can. Patreon.com/knowingjohn is how to sign up. There's zero requirement to sign up. There's no paywall here. If you simply want to go there and look at his stuff, he writes all the time, very prolific in putting his thoughts into words on paper, on the internet. He used to do this all on Facebook, and he wants it to be in somewhere else, another location on the internet. And Patreon is one of those places. So you can read everything he's got to say and listen to him do some cool interviews with his dad and things like that. So patreon.com/knowingjohn. This podcast, this interview that I did with John, you could also think of it as he doing an interview with me. Because this show will be available on his Patreon, on the Knowing John Patreon site, as well as it will be this episode of Three Things with JR. So little cross-promotion going on. And it's all about really getting caught up with John. I am very much looking forward to seeing John in person sometime in the relatively near future, and where we can get caught up in person. Maybe we'll bring microphones and record that too, or maybe we'll just hang out and you won't get to hear any of it. I don't know, but please check it out. This is it's gonna be a long one. It's gonna be like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that. And we both agreed not to edit out anything on this. So it is pretty much completely unedited. I will tell you, I did have a recording snafu towards the end of it. But because we were both recording, I got to grab the part of the recording that I missed from John's recording. He sent them to me. So I've cobbled it together, and so you might notice a subtle change in the audio late in the episode. And it's completely my fault, and John completely bailed me out. So he's new to podcasting. I've been doing it for a while, and he more successfully recorded the show than I did. So kudos to John for being able to do that. I think that's all I need to tell you before we get started with my interview with John Worrell. Patreon.com/knowingjohn. Here we go.
There I am.
There you are.
There I are.
Let me see here. Let me get my microphone set up right.
See how you're sounding and see how I'm sounding. And
all right, I just switched it to this microphone. Does that sound any different or better?
You sound good to me. Let's see if I start recording. What do your levels look like here? Oh, I've got dials I can play with now, Adam.
Oh yes, you got knobs to turn.
Yeah, so I think the goal is to make my little squiggly lines here look roughly the same size as yours.
That would be ideal. On mine, so I'm recording in Ableton. I'm not recording in Zoom, and I've got my computer volume maxed out, and that's where your level's coming from, and I've got my mic set right where I want it.
Yeah, so let me see if I can my mic a little bit. Give my mic a little more juice here.
That's a beautiful mic stand, pop filter, and headphones you got there, buddy.
You like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I wanted to do it right, so I'm looking at you the whole time, I have to move it here and I have to shift this around this way, but then I look like Squidward a little bit.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah,
you don't need to look like Squidward. You could go this way a little, and then I have a face.
Are you recording this as video too to put out as video, or is it just going to be audio?
Not at all.
Okay,
just audio. Nobody needs to look at me, Adam. Yeah. No, I've got my recording has started, and I'm pretty terrible. I haven't tried editing anything yet because that's the like next level.
That's the fun part for me. A lot of people hate editing because it can be very tedious, but I thoroughly enjoy editing audio and editing video. The process is very similar on a computer. To cutting scenes and, moving things around and creating it. I used to do video editing as a side gig back before.
Well, I sort of recall now before we get to, because here's what's going to happen is you and I are going to talk and we're going to go on a and then the next thing you know, it's an hour and a half later. Because that's what we do.
I wrote down some notes. I'm going to make sure we stay. We got things I know I want to talk to you about. But we're free to go on tangents as far as I'm concerned.
Thank God, because I know no other direction. So let's set the table a little bit. What we're doing here. This is a new thing for me. Yeah, you've been doing podcasting for some time now, so I mean you've probably done this before. For me and for my listeners, this is a new thing where we're sharing a conversation here. My friend Adam Stoffel. Also known as JR, also known as the man, and plus now I think you're going to be in a play coming out, which we have to talk about or a drama, some sort of drama,
a musical
piece, even better.
I played Nostradamus.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Of course,
I knew you were going to do that. Yeah. So, and I'm going to be recording this for my listeners here on Patreon, and as part of my archive of conversations that I want my children to be able to go back and listen to later, so that they have a sense of who I am and so forth. And then you're doing something very similar for yourself, Adam.
Absolutely. It's one of the purposes of doing the podcast is that these audio clips, these examples of who I am, what I was thinking that day, things I've thought about in my years leading up to where I am now is a lot of that. I'm trying to capture it so my kids, my grandkids, anybody, but especially those people can know who I am or who I was. At some point, it'll be who I was.
Documenting the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And this is, I owe you a big thanks because this entire setup that I've got here, I winged it a little bit on the mic stand. I splurged slightly. I'm glad that I did, though. It's a good. So I've got the mic stand, the pop filter, the Scarlett Studio microphone, and the Scarlett 2i2 mixer here, as well as a few cables, which came gratis. All of this at the on the advice of Adam here, who's sort of become very good at this, and I'm very new at this. And so, Adam, I appreciate your pointing me in the right direction, helping me figure out what I needed to get this done. And I'm appreciative to my former employer, Crutchfield, for providing at charge, but for being a place where I could get all of this equipment. So, Crutchfield, if you're a car guy or a home video and audio guy or gal,
it's National Women's Month. Don't forget the gals.
Yes, at my house, it's always national. In fact, in my house, it's always International Women's Month, which is an even bigger deal. But yes, the guys and gals, it's not just for cars and homes anymore. Now you can get your podcasting equipment and all kinds of great stuff at Crutchfield.
I'll tell you, at the start of the pandemic, we pretty much sold out of all of our podcasting gear, and it's been tough to keep it in stock. Things are a little bit better now, but man, a lot of people have started podcasting since they are sitting at home in front of their computers.
It's funny. The pandemic, not only in terms of podcasting, people taking advantage of social media opportunities, but people working from home now, and the idea of remote work and offices being hybrid between people who are local and people who are distant, and hiring opportunities. We used to, the studio, I work at big, huge games, that we used to only really look for people in the Baltimore area. And you can find people with video game experience in the Baltimore area, but not a ton. And it's the same people that have been around for 30 years,
Sure.
Just bouncing between studios around here. But now we can hire, from anywhere. And it's made a vast, and all of this was possible before. It's just we didn't have the need to do it. And so nobody really explored these spaces. I think the pandemic kind of gave us as a society a kick in the ass to go in a certain direction that was there, but people didn't really understand, what the benefits were.
Workplaces, especially office workplaces, will never be the same. I mean, it is.
Oh, yeah.
It has created lasting change, and mostly for the better, I think. In many ways.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, like your company, Crutchfield has been able to start hiring people that, typically we need them in our Charlottesville area or Southwest Virginia, where we have 2 call centers, one in each place. And so most of our employees needed to be local to those places. And now, not necessarily. Pretty much anywhere, within a couple hours of here is fine, because they do need to come in occasionally, but they can do the job from home.
They can do it from home. It's less expensive on Crutchfield. It's better for the environment. It's better for the that people aren't commuting. People are spending more time with their kids and their loved ones.
Yeah.
When you're done for the day, you walk out of your room and then you're with your family. Now, in some ways that's good. In some ways, if you've had a bad day at work, having a little bit of time to decompress and change gears between work and home is sometimes a helpful thing.
I find that to be true. I was very resistant to working from home every day. And I didn't at the beginning of the pandemic until my boss said, you have to go home. You cannot
go
work
away.
here. Yeah. So I set up a home office. I mean, I had the ability to, but I needed a couple things, got the desk all situated, got the home office, and immediately started enjoying working from home. It was nice. But what I missed was my commute. I love my commute. I love driving.
Yes.
I want to get in my car. It's got a great stereo. I want to crank some tunes or listen to a podcast or Howard Stern or whatever I feel like listening to. And my commute is 20 to 25 minutes, and I crave that. If I don't get to go drive somewhere every day, I will make up reasons to go drive.
It's a little bit. It's like a meditative. It's a therapeutic thing. Speaking of home offices, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. I'm admiring your background, which I expect is a Zoom background. My guess, I'm going to take a stab at this. because I'm in the games industry. It looks to me like car simulator, car mechanic simulator background.
So what my background is actually a picture my daughter took of me and my granddaughter in one of our video studios at Crutchfield, and this video studio is set up to look like a car garage with tools and speakers brackets.
Really?
And yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so that's can you see?
Very close.
Can you see me and Aaliyah right there?
You have to lean to your right. Oh, look at that little girl. Yeah. My God. Who's that? Who's that weirdo grabbing her?
Yeah. Somebody call somebody.
How old is?
So that's my daughter's daughter. She's 3.5. She'll be 4 in June, so almost 4. And her name is Aaliyah, and she
Aaliyah.
Up until she was born, my daughter had been the cutest baby I had ever seen, and now my daughter gave birth to the cutest baby I've ever seen.
Your granddaughter is precious.
She's adorable.
And I have a 4-year-old daughter myself. I also have a 19-year-old son. I have children. I've decided at some point in my life that the best thing I could do, they say it's important to give back to the world. And I feel this very strongly. I feel I've had so much given to me, and I've been the beneficiary of so much privilege in my life. And I want to turn and help others. And I felt the best way I could do that is to make sure that I had a large number of children spread geographically and chronologically throughout time and space to have the widest impact that I could on society.
You didn't want all your children's eggs in one basket, right?
No, you can't have them all in one city at the same time. No. That's ridiculous. I've got Singapore covered, and then now we're over here, and there's a good 20-year range. So it's going to be a long time, I think, until this world is finished with my influence.
So I learned, and if I knew this before, I forgot. But I learned from listening to your discussion with your dad that you have a 19-year-old son. I was unaware of this, or I had forgotten it. But I'm pretty sure I didn't know that.
We were out of touch for a little while, Adam.
Well, we were.
Yes. 19 years ago, I had a son. That's pretty well the story.
We don't need to go deeper than that.
There's more to it. Well, I already did. And thus I have a son.
That's how
now. I'm a big believer in family planning. So my son was born on Valentine's Day. Because then that way I wouldn't forget. My daughter, for example, was born on New Year's Eve. This is how you do things. This is what family planning means to me. To make sure everything lines up.
You're a much better planner than I am.
Yeah, I'm a producer I'm a sort of a project manager by nature.
Right.
Yes. I met Clayton's mother. So I have 3 boys from my first marriage: Clayton, Wesley, and Gabriel, and they now live in Singapore with their mother, Karen, who I met, of all places, on ICQ, well back in the early internet days.
That was I was chat rooms and stuff, right?
That's right. I was working in America Online, and we had just bought ICQ as a property, and so I was checking it out because you need to. And I got to playing spades with this one girl from Singapore, and we became spades partners, and we started winning spades tournaments together. And at some point in these spades tournaments, we used to usually come in, because there might be 80, 100 teams in these tournaments, and we fairly regularly came in like the top 3. And part of the problem was, like, at one point she sent me a message while we were playing, and she said, do you want to know what cards I have? And I said, no, that would be cheating. And she said at that moment she realized that she wanted to marry me. So she did. And then she came to UVA to get her sociology degree while I was living in Charlottesville, working at Crutchfield. So the last time I saw you was probably Fridays after 5.
I have that on my list of things I wanted to make sure we talked about. The last time I've physically been in your presence was on the downtown mall in Charlottesville at Fridays after 5. That's exactly what I have written down.
And I believe Aubrey was there.
That makes sense.
I think that I saw her. Your audio is now starting to crackle a little bit for me, and I don't know if that's on me or if that's on your end. Say something again for me.
Say something again for me.
Yeah, it's green on my thing, but it's coming off. Let's see if I mute you and unmute you. If that does, I don't even know if I'd know how to do that. Let's see. No, I don't think I can mute you. That would be far too big a power to wield in a meeting.
How dare you even think about muting me?
Yeah, no, you sound a little bit like you're coming through a fan. Do you mind if we pause for a second and restart the Zoom?
Sure, no problem.
Or let me leave and then I'll re-click the Zoom link. So
all right.
I'm going to keep my thing running here. Cool. All right, leave and then let's see, now he's waiting for me to figure out the hell I'm doing. So it's just you and me right now. We have no Adam. That's a pretty good guy. All right, let me click the link again, and it'll open up and join with the video. And he claims to be willing to let me in soon. Sure. Okay,
how do I sound now?
Exactly the same as you sounded before.
All right. I have a feeling I know what's happening.
Okay.
So I have barely enough upload speed to do this sort of thing from where I live out here in the country.
Do you want to cut your video?
Well, that could help. I could also text my girlfriend who's downstairs, who's probably watching TV, which is all streaming these days. She's like, "Am I going to be able to watch TV while you're doing that?" I'm like, "If I'm having trouble, I'll text you." So
all right. Well, let's see how that goes.
Turn TV off. Internet is struggling.
Capitals will win anyway. Watch tomorrow.
Well, she couldn't care less about those kind of things.
I don't know. I'm guessing at this point.
So I will turn video off first, and we'll see if that helps.
Okay.
So now you're seeing a picture of me from when I was thin and wearing sunglasses and a hat.
I do, but you sound exactly the same still.
So that hasn't changed anything.
No, that hasn't changed anything.
Well, that's annoying.
I'm definitely going to learn how to edit now.
You're going to have to, because this is not the most compelling audio right here. All right.
Nothing on my Patreon is the most compelling.
So let me end the meeting, which should end it for both of us, and then I'll start another one and send you another link.
Hit me a new link.
All
right, buddy. All right. If I don't edit this out, Adam has now ended the meeting again. We're going to try again. It is sort of a shame that so much is dependent upon having good internet speeds these days. Although, there was probably a time when things were dependent on having, electricity. And a lot of people didn't have electricity. Look back in the 1930s in rural parts of America, there was no electricity. That left a lot of people out in the cold. I feel like high-speed internet's right around the same now. All right, let's join again. Yeah. Okay.
Are we back?
Right.
All right. So I started this meeting with no video.
Yeah, you still sound the same. What if, do you want to try using Facebook Messenger call?
Can't hurt.
Let's give it a try.
All right.
I'll call you. So if there's somebody posting, I'll take that bandwidth.
Cool.
All right, buddy. All right. Leaving there, back over to Facebook, fire up Adam, and let's do a Facebook call here. Although I did make it a video call, so maybe that. Sure enough, there's the old phone ring. He might could take it on a phone. All right.
Hey, now.
Hey, now you sound better.
Nice.
full points to Meta over Zoom for this one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know
Meta.
how I feel about that. Meta. I have stock in Zoom. I bought some Zoom stock at the start of the pandemic.
That was smart.
Did very, very well. Yeah, but then I didn't pay attention over the last 6 months. It all went to hell. But I think it'll come back because I think that people are thinking, oh, well, pandemic's ending, so nobody's going to need Zoom anymore. And my thinking is, no. Zoom has forever changed the way that a lot of businesses operate. I think that if they're smart, they're going to grow. So I'm going to hold on to that stock, even though it dipped. I may even buy the dip.
Playing the long game.
Yeah, I'm not a day trader.
We use Microsoft Teams at work, so Zoom is a thing I can use if I need it, but I don't use it on a daily basis.
We don't use Teams at work, yet somehow I cannot get it to stop turning on every time I boot my laptop. Because Microsoft gives you great tools for adjusting what starts, and then they also make sure that those tools are limited to what they want you to be able to adjust.
Yeah, they're like the Vegas casinos, right? It's easy to get into a casino, not so easy to find your way out.
Not so easy out. So you sound much better. I feel terrible now that I don't see your granddaughter's hand emerging from your neck the way that I did previously.
Yeah,
because it had a good. It had a good. What was the Army of Darkness feel to it? If you recall that scene, a classic.
So I believe we were talking about meeting each other for the first time in a long time, and as the last time we met.
That's right. Because we got into my children. I told you I met my wife at UVA, and that would have been right at the time that I last saw you in person. And it was Fridays after 5. And you know what? I bet you there was a band that played. The guitarist's name was Mike. He was this small Asian kid who could wail, and then they had a black girl who played saxophone, and she could play 2 saxophones at the same time. Wow. Which you didn't see off, one in each hand. And they played like world music, and they were a Charlottesville band. And I often think about, I'd love to hear their stuff again. So over the last 20 years, I have occasionally racked my brain for their name, but their name wasn't a common word. It was some sort of a proper noun that they invented themselves.
I don't know which band it was. I have some guesses.
Correct.
Like Baaba Seth comes to mind.
Baaba Seth might have been it. Let me Baaba Seth.
Baaba Seth.
Yes, 2 A's and then a Baaba Seth. Let me look them up. My goodness. I wish that they were. I don't think that they're big enough for a Wikipedia site, but they do have a Facebook.
Yeah, that's what I'm pulling up myself right now. I see someone playing a sax in this band. I can't tell if she's playing or if it's a she even.
Yeah,
she's playing one or two.
This has got to be. Yeah, there's a
on their Facebook page they have a link to their MySpace.
A link to their MySpace. These must be the guys. Yes, I think so. Let's see. Yes, Hope Claiborne is the name of the woman who played the saxophone. I remember her. I met her a few times. Charlottesville. Everybody met everybody once in a while. And Mike was the name of the guitar player. Let me see if I can.
I mean, there's a little Asian guy in their cover photo. There's a little Asian guy over on the right playing guitar for sure.
Wailing on the guitar. That's absolutely right. It was, and I think that Baaba Seth was playing the last time I saw you because they're the last band I remember seeing. So
look through their photos, and I think it's like the second photo is them at a Fridays After 5. Now, Fridays After 5 didn't look like that back then because they've now built a pavilion and a much nicer stage.
No, it was a whole outdoor thingamajig.
Yeah,
it was all outdoor on that amphitheater.
Mm-hmm.
grass, and then all of the, and then the kids and a few drunk girls would always dance in front of the stage.
Yeah, they now have a big, huge tent over that and a
Well, it's
much
weird.
bigger stage.
Yeah, because now they're, it's like Guns N' Roses will play there or whatever. You'll get like real honest to God
Yeah.
acts that come through.
Yep. Indigo Girls, we've seen them there. We've seen Styx. We saw Styx there a couple years back.
Jesus, Styx.
Yeah. Sturgill Simpson, seen him there.
I saw the Indigo Girls at Wolf Trap in the, when they were like in the early 90s or whenever they were, kind of prominent. The Indigo Girls, both of them, neither of them indigo. Felt a little let down there. I saw a Blue Man Group. That's why I got what I expected with Blue Man Group. Indigo Girls, not so much.
That's crazy. That was the band. Nailed it. The first guess. Sweet.
Baaba Seth.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, you crushed it.
Yeah.
Dude, we've been on the same page. This is how we are. It's how we do, buddy.
All right. Shall we move backwards in time?
Move back to where we're going next.
At the very beginning?
Yeah. That's
or do we want to finish telling me about your son? Because I don't know anything more than what you've already just told me.
So my sons, I have 4 sons now. The first 3 were with my first wife, Karen, who again, a Singaporean girl, came over, sociology student at UVA. We were dating, lived together. She moved with me to Texas when I left Charlottesville in 2002. Which was because Electronic Arts had bought out Kesmai, the online game studio there, and shut it down and moved a dozen of us or whatever out to Austin, Texas. Another fantastic city. It's very, very similar to Charlottesville.
I was going to say, you and living in Texas doesn't quite compute, but if it's Austin, then it makes some sense.
Yeah, I'm much more of an Austin person than a Texan person.
Right.
Yeah. And then we moved from Texas. I got promoted to a position out in California, and that's where Clayton was born in 2003 on Valentine's Day. Changed my life, as a first child often will. Didn't stop me from drinking too much and partying and going out and staying out late. I just brought him with me. And that was, so he enjoyed that rock and roll life for a while. And then I think we moved to Massachusetts. His brother Wesley was born 2 years later, 2005 in September. And then I was getting burnt out at EA. I was working too many hours, and I got an opportunity to reunite with my friend Jay Piet, who was I had worked with at Kesmai in Charlottesville, and that involved moving to Massachusetts, up near Boston, which we did. And that's where sort of my normal carousing crew wasn't there anymore. So it was a matter of, well, I'll find a new carousing crew. And I did. I got into like trivia nights at bars and that scene for a while. And then I had to find another job because I got let go from that one, laid off. And I ended up down in New Jersey and commuting into New York City working at America Online. And that's when my third son, Gabriel, was born. We were pregnant with Gabriel when I was laid off from Turbine, and he was due in like 2 weeks, and I was losing my insurance. I reached out to my friends to say, hey, I really need a job like now. And a guy that I had worked with at America Online years and years ago, in the 90s, was on a community hockey team, and he told his buddies, hey, I've got this person, that here's his background. He's done some production, some change management. And one of his coworkers, who worked at AOL Games, said, oh, we're looking for somebody that would have that kind of background. Can you forward me his resume? And so Jason Gollum, my friend, sent my resume over to a guy named John Logston. And John Logston, as it turned out, was the AOL's representative to Electronic Arts. And I'd been working with him for like 3 years at EA, and I took really good care of him and Sharon White. And he remembered that, and he's like, "Oh, it's Worrell. Yeah, let's bring him in." And so they hired me right away. And Gabriel was born while we were living in temp housing in New Jersey, looking for a home. When we rented a house, and so when we showed up to meet the moving van, it was the afternoon of the day that he was born. And so there's my wife. She just given birth. She's got this baby. And there's moving trucks and guys with furniture and we, oh, I think I have the key to the house. Yeah. And we get in, and she decides for some reason that she's going to make, I don't remember if she made cookies or soup or something. She made something and brought it across the street to the neighbor. I was getting tangents, I told you. But the thing is, like Clayton was suddenly, at some point, we noticed Clayton was running around the backyard with this little girl who was the same age as him. And we're like, oh, cool, there's a little girl, but then it's simply like, there's a little girl running around our backyard. That's a little odd. So we figured out it was the kid lived across the street. So Karen made cookies, and we brought them across the street to say, hey, we're the ones that are moving in. It's nice to see you. And they were very friendly and chatty. And then they noticed, they said, "Oh, are you doing okay?" And Karen said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Oh, well, you have this hospital band on your arm." She said, "Oh yeah, I gave birth this morning."
For real? Same day? Like they didn't make her stay overnight?
I'm a fan of strong women. My wife Lizzie is if I had by chance met Lizzie in the year 1645, I probably, and it's not okay to do this anymore. Times have changed. The morality is different in the world, and women have a different role today than they did in 1645. So I'm guessing a little bit as to what was considered appropriate or not appropriate in that era. But I could have made pretty good money, I think, if I'd hitched like a plow to her and just ran her back and forth over the field. She's that kind of, she's the salt of the earth. She'll crush. If she has something she needs to do, it gets done to hell. She does it. And that's, is why one of the many reasons I love her so much I don't know many women that you could hitch a plow to in an age appropriate era, and feel proud of it. I'm definitely going to learn about editing.
I also am a fan of strong women. My girlfriend Kiki, trains horses, trains people and horses, and
wow,
yeah, and the strength in her legs is just it's impressive.
Do you own a plow?
No.
All right. Well, I just had to check.
No.
Apparently something.
So I won't be able to find out if she can indeed pull a plow.
There has to be a ninja warrior of plow pulling for women. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe when Ukraine is free,
right?
We'll find out what their television looks like. So I think that's a show we could make happen.
I think I knew you had 3 kids from your first wife. I don't think I realized that one of them is an adult. I think that's the part that eluded me.
I think it still eludes me to this moment.
What's he doing?
He's still in school. So the thing with Clay was we moved around so much as kids when he was little that he ended up having to repeat several grades. One reason, like in Massachusetts, we put him in a Spanish immersion program where all of the classes were taught in Spanish, and we knew several children in the neighborhood who were teenagers who were fluent in Spanish because they had been through this program. We thought this was a brilliant idea. Let's put him in the Spanish immersion program. So, he's going to school every day. He's a little boy, and we're living in Massachusetts, it's winter time. So I'm standing out in the snow waiting for the bus with him, and we're smashing pieces of ice and Hulk smash, and Daddy throw a snowball at the tree, and all of these things are great. And then he goes to school, And then at the end of the day, I've got a cup of coffee and I've made a thermos of hot chocolate and I'm waiting for him to come. And here comes the school bus and I can see his little face in the window. And then the school bus stops and off he comes, Daddy. And let's smash some ice. And then we smash, and here's your hot chocolate. And I said, how was school today? He said, it was great. I said, good. What did you learn about it? He said, I have no idea what anybody's saying. Well, all right, but did you have a good time? Yeah. He loved it, but no clue. So then when we had to move, we moved somewhere that didn't have a Spanish immersion program. And so he had to do kindergarten over because he hadn't learned it. He just spent the whole time, playing with blocks or whatever and getting yelled at by, people that don't, nothing got through.
Right.
And then we moved to Canada and they had a different system and he had to start again. And then he moved to Singapore and guess what? He didn't pass the Singaporean exams for the, so now he's 19. I think he might have like another year left in high school, before he's done with it. He's also, he's half American, and half Singaporean. So he may be slightly taller than me at this point. I don't know. Because I don't get to see him in person very often. We see each other on video sometimes, things like that. But last time I saw him, he was getting really close. So he lords over all of these Singaporeans because he's, super tall. And it was an interesting thing living in the United States. He was half Asian, and he was different because of that. Living in Singapore, he's half white. And he's different because of that, and a different way pushes him up the caste chain. Because he's lighter skinned than the other children, and so it's very odd. Because when we were over here, we would sometimes have to talk a little bit about, I know that you look a little bit different than the other children. It doesn't matter what people look like. That's not what's important. And if anybody gives you a hard time about that, you let your teacher know. Or you let me know, or you have those conversations.
Sure.
And then when he moved over to Singapore, then it kind of became like the same conversation from another perspective of, listen, just because you're lighter skinned than other people doesn't make you better than them.
Right.
There are going to be people who treat you as though you are better than them, but don't be fooled. What makes a person is what's inside, and these things. But it was an interesting flip on, being biracial has different connotations based on perspective and where you are and things like that. And it blew my mind. I didn't know. When I had the three boys, though, all of them were half Asian. So I like to tell people that by the math of it, I had 1.5 Asian children, and 1.5 white children.
I assume they're still half Asian, right?
Well, I don't know. I would reckon there's still half.
All right, let's go back to when we first would have met.
So that would have been, when did you get into that house?
We moved to the house on Greenwich Street in the summer of 1984.
Falls Church, Virginia.
Falls Church. I started at Falls Church Public Schools in 5th grade. So the last year at TJ, when it was still called TJ.
Which is now, I think, are they calling it Oak Street?
I think so. I know they've just changed it because of TJ's, colorful history.
In Charlottesville, he's still referred to as Mr. Jefferson. Is that correct?
And it's the grounds at UVA.
Grounds
That's absolutely. He's still.
You spoke of Mr. Jefferson in Charlottesville as though he were in the next room and could hear you.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. As if he was the first president and all of that. I mean, like he was. Yeah. He is still very much revered. Right. The only one that's mattered.
Right. That one.
Yeah.
So in 1984, I would have been 9 years old then.
Turning. So I turned 10.
11 years old. Yeah. I didn't do well at TJ.
So you were always one grade ahead of me. So I think when I moved there, you would have been starting at George Mason in sixth
At
grade.
George Mason.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is now becoming Meridian.
Right.
Yes. Both George Mason and Thomas Jefferson schools, for those listening, it's 2022, and last year Falls Church made a very controversial in Falls Church vote to change the names of George Mason Junior Senior High School and Thomas Jefferson Elementary, based on the fact that those two historic figures, who are founding fathers of the country, but they were also enormous slave owners in Virginia, and uh, that was I I I was okay with name change, but I'm usually okay with name change. I was okay with naming the Redskins something else. I was okay with naming the high school something else. A name to me is window dressing. I've changed my own name several times. Names apparently are not very important to me.
Although you got to admit, Commanders is not a great name.
It's going to grow on me. I'm okay with. Look at this, everybody who can't see. I purchased this from a local artisan who came up with this graphic design.
That's cool. It's a
Yeah.
Washington Commanders coffee mug
Yeah, with camouflage,
with camouflage W on it.
and the
and a-
skyline.
Camouflage Washington Monument.
Yeah, lots of camouflage. I've never hunted a day in my life. I did join the army at one point. Did you know that?
No. For how
I did.
how long did that last?
Not very long. Anybody who's familiar with my high school record knows how well I get along with authority and structure.
Right.
But I was also, I was a little closeted trans kid, and the army, I'd been told my entire life, will make a man out of you. Only it didn't. Furthermore, I didn't like it. But I enjoyed parts of it, right? Like the physical drills. I enjoyed the physical drills. I enjoyed the camaraderie when there was camaraderie. I didn't like the testosterone. I didn't like you only have value because you're part of the largest gang in the world mentality. And I wasn't really a big fan of, if we tell you to go kill these strangers, they're dead and you're going to do it. I didn't like that part of it so much, but I like the ropes courses were fantastic. Fort Jackson's a lot of fun.
Did you make it out of basic training?
No, no. No, I made it through. I think basic was 8 weeks. I made it 6. And then I had an asthma attack during a 2-mile run in full gear at 4:30 in the morning in February. And they said, son, you can't be in the U.S. Army if you've got asthma.
Did you lie to him at the entrance, like when you were applying to get in and stuff? Because
I lied to some of them. I didn't lie to the ones that told me to lie to the other ones.
That makes sense.
So the recruiters said, do you have asthma? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, don't tell that to anybody.
That's
all
yeah.
right.
So
Guess
I applied. I went to an armed forces recruiting place there in Falls Church because I was thinking at some point maybe I wanted to be in the Air Force or something, not to fly planes, but because I had heard it was the easiest to get into of the armed forces.
Sure.
And I did recognize at that point that I probably needed some discipline in my life. I think that would have been good for me had I gotten in. But it wasn't to be, because when they said, do you have any kind of asthma? I said, the first year in 10th grade when I started playing football at Mason, I was noticing my chest would hurt. And that was within a year or so after I had started smoking. And so that's probably more the cause than, anyway, I was out of breath and my chest hurt and went running all those laps in football practice. And I mentioned it to my mom. She took me to the doctor. They diagnosed me with exercise-induced asthma is what I was told I had.
Yeah, sure.
They gave me an inhaler and everything. And I mean, they could have just said, you're a fat smoker is what you are.
You're a fat smoker. Seems I've diagnosed you right away.
Yeah.
It's funny because the Air Force, I can't imagine a scenario outside of hey, the enemy is actually at our air base, scramble, scenario where anybody would need to run anywhere in the Air Force.
Probably not. They do, though. They do run. My stepson is in the Air Force, and he runs a lot.
Because they tell him to, but not because he's in a hurry. No, he doesn't need to. If he needs to get somewhere fast, he'll take an airplane.
Sometimes he runs out to the flight line and, tells the pilot it's okay to fly the plane. But,
Well, that's good. That's good. They have radios for that now.
The minute I mentioned exercise-induced asthma, they're like, all right, cool. So do you know anybody else that wants to be in the Air Force? I mean, because you can't be. So
the Army was not quite so... they're like, oh, do you have asthma? Yeah, never say that. All right, sign here. So I did. I tried to, not often do Quakers sign up for the military. Do you want to know why I signed up?
I would love to.
It's a fantastic story, and we share fantastic stories. So, 1990, the United States Embassy, State Department sent Jean Kirkpatrick, I think was her name, sent a letter to Saddam Hussein that said, "Hey, just so you know, if you were to invade and take Kuwait, the United States wouldn't really take a position on that." Which Saddam Hussein, our longstanding ally in the fight against the Cold War and the Soviet-backed Iranians, took as meaning, go ahead and have Kuwait. And so he announced, guess what? Kuwait is mine, and then rolled in and took it. And Kuwait didn't put up too much of a fight because they couldn't. And then immediately after that, the United States said, "My God, Saddam Hussein is the next Hitler. He's a monster. That never before has there been such a, everything we're saying about Putin today."
Yeah.
And they said, "You've got until January 16th of next year to get the hell out of Kuwait, or we're going to come in and kick you out." And Saddam, who had already kind of went all in on this Kuwait's mine, I'm going to have it strategy, didn't really have any way of saying, I was wrong. I was just kidding, have Kuwait back.
Right.
It's not really historically ours. It's not really vitally important that we, free it. So he was kind of done. So he's in Kuwait and I've got my Republican Guard, so January 16th was rolling around, and George Bush, the first, was getting ready to ride in 1991. So I'd already been, I'd already dropped out of high school on recommendation of the high school, and was fucking around with nothing to do. So I went down to Washington, D.C. on January 12th, and I spent 4 days out in Lafayette Park, across the street from the White House, protesting the inevitable American response of invading, Kuwait. It became Desert Storm, and it was going to happen. But I felt like it had been set up by the United States, and the reason why I felt that it was set up by the United States is because the Soviet Union had just fallen. Our big...
We needed an enemy.
We needed an enemy because our entire economy since World War II had been based, right? We were in the shits before World War II, where our economy was horrible. It was, it was the Great Depression, the worst economy there had ever been. And what saved it was World War II. And so when World War II ended, we kept finding enemy after enemy after enemy. And the big looming enemy was always the Soviet Union and communism and this. And by the way, they're all over the planet at the same time. So we need, the biggest army there could ever be. And the Soviet Union had just crumbled. And on the voting, and as soon as they crumbled, all of the talk was, wow, we won the Cold War. Now we don't need to have this massive balloon defense budget. We can start investing in schools and infrastructure and healthcare and these kinds of things. And on the voting block in front of Congress at that time was the stealth bomber and the A-1 tank. And the Congress people were saying, I don't need to spend $16 billion per plane on these. I don't have an enemy. And so lo and behold, here comes the next Hitler. Gasses his own people, and there's massacre. And by the way, he's got weapons of mass destruction. All of these things uh, came together to culminate in a war that was the first war that was on everybody's television 24/7, and in everybody's home. Everybody's glued to the television, and what are they watching? They're watching these smart bombs go into windows. Oh, they're so amazing. Look at these tanks roll across the desert majestically, and this tank's gonna pull down the statue of Saddam Hussein, and here's we're embedding television crews on tanks to go, so you can see how amazing this. It was a massive commercial for smart bomb technology and stealth fighters and tanks.
And we're laughing at the Iraqis' pathetic Scud missiles and
Yes,
marveling at how accurate and amazing our missiles are.
and there's the dreaded Republican Guard are surrendering to camera crews and nurses and anybody they can. They're like, please get us the fuck out of here. This is not. We had no idea we were fighting you. We were told we were fighting nobody, and we won. We're not prepared to go against the country that is funding our military. That doesn't make any sense. But here we are. We're going to roll in and kick this guy's ass and televise all of it. And for me, as a young Quaker, anti-war, radical leftist, I felt like I needed to go protest this, and I did. I went down to Washington D.C. and spent 4 days. I smoked my first joint there, and some white girl with dreadlocks and a guitar, and we sang Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs. She got me high, and then people were handing out brownies. It was a really pretty fucked up scenario, but
Sure.
But we were protesting, and that, and that's it was my little Woodstock. And at some point, somebody gave me a megaphone. I think because he got tired of yelling into it, and so I started yelling into it and leading chants against George Bush and this sort of thing. And then since I had a megaphone, somebody brought me up on a stage. And there I am. I'm 17 years old. Now I'm on a stage speaking to a anti-war demonstration. It was the proudest moment of my little, revolutionary career as a child. It's cool. 6 months ago, I couldn't wait to get the hell out of this damn school as I was being repressed. Now I'm Martin Luther King. Right. I'm fairly certain that I'm the greatest thing that's ever happened. And so after I got off the stage, an ABC camera crew pulled me aside and said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 17." And she said, "Well, what are you doing up on how are you part of the organization of this?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really, there isn't really a strong organization behind this. We're just here, we all came together to voice our opinion, and everybody's got an opinion. So if you want to get on stage, I'm sure they'd be fine with that. So she asked, could she interview me? And so she interviewed me for ABC News. And I explained why I was there and why I thought the war was wrong and these kinds of things. I didn't want us to invade. And then at the end, she thanked me, and she turned to go back to her van, and her cameraman came up and pushed me in the chest and called me a fucking pussy, and said, what, you weren't in Vietnam. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't understand what freedom is. You don't understand, and then some dude behind me in a camo jacket pushes past me and pushes that guy and says, "Well, I was in Vietnam and this kid's right." And so they start fighting, and I get in the middle of it, and I'm trying to, it's a nonviolent protest against fighting. So let's not, and then the next weirdest damn thing that happened is coming down the street from the other corner are all of these America guys, and they've got American flags, and they're certain that we're all commie faggots, and they just, all they want to do is beat the fuck out of us to prove something about America, and I don't know what, and I don't know why they're, so
I think we saw those guys last year at the January 6th thing, right? Like they were back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they were a little older.
Right.
So and it was really, it was in that moment that I thought to myself, where are these people coming from? Because they're certainly not coming from the same place I'm coming from, right? I'm coming from a place of, I don't think that it's fair to the Kuwaitis or the Iraqis that both of them get set up to be military targets just because it's convenient to the American economy right now, and to the reelection chances for Bush, and these things that I felt were what were behind the Gulf War. And to this day, I think I'm right about that. Uh, but I know there's different opinions, and I'm sometimes my beliefs are wrong, and whatever. But I haven't seen anything to convince me otherwise. But I didn't understand why there could be people that, if the idea was, if America goes to war against another country, it doesn't matter what the reason is, it doesn't matter what the justification is, it's the right thing to do, and America's right, and America, is somehow, if America does it, that makes it justified and a good thing. And I couldn't. I was born in the same America they were born in. The fact that I was born here, I don't feel like that somehow means that the country, because I was born in it, is therefore correct in everything it does. That doesn't make any sense to me. But I tend to, I'm more of a globalist, right? Like I tend to think about people in other parts of the world. So I got to thinking, well, where does this come from? I want to find that out. And somewhere in that moment, something clicked in me and said, probably the best way to find out why people are wholeheartedly pro-military is to go into the military. And so, it was maybe 2 years later that I found myself wandering down a street in Las Vegas, wondering why I was there. I wasn't even old enough to gamble. What the fuck was I doing in Vegas? But there I was, and I didn't have any plans for my future, and I was running out of money, and I figured, well, I'll get clothes and a salary and a job and things like that. If I'll learn something about the military. I'm going to join the military. So I just walked in and signed up and did as I was told and lied about asthma. And I went and did my ASVAB test and crushed it. And they were going to have me working on communication system design,
Wow.
which would have been very cool. Probably wouldn't have mattered that much in that role, how asthmatic I was or wasn't. But I never got to my AIT. I never got to the advanced infantry training, which I should have done at Fort Roy, I think. Never made it to Fort Roy. Just got to Fort Jackson, and partway through that before I got drummed out. But that's my big military story.
I'm learning more about you. Stuff I never knew.
This is what we do, man. We learn about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Did you go to Falls Church City Public Schools for all of your school age years? Yeah.
Yeah. I started at Mount Daniel right as I was just about to turn 5. I walked to Mount Daniel my first year.
Mm-hmm.
The second,
up that hill.
well, because in that year it was a K through 6 school, and then the second year that I went there, it was only kindergarten and first grade, and there was another kindergarten school. I can't remember the name of it. That kids on the other side of town had gone to, that they closed down, and they brought those kids over to Mount Daniel, and it became K-1. But yeah, we walked the first year because there were 11-year-olds and 10-year-olds who could be crossing guards, and then the second year I had to take the bus because there weren't older kids to be patrols.
We moved to Falls Church because my mom had determined that they were the best schools in the area. At the time, they were some of the best schools in the entire country, according to U.S. News and World Report, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think she was disappointed in the experience. Like I had a pretty good experience going to those schools.
Where did you move from?
So we lived in Fairfax County. So,
Okay.
and my experience in those schools was pretty horrible.
Right.
I had a horrible third grade teacher who was horribly racist, putting black kids in the corner. And like,
Jeez.
yeah, I mean, and they couldn't, they tried to fire her, but they couldn't because she was tenured,
Tenured.
apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, we also ended up in Falls Church because of the school systems. We were down in I was born at Martha Jefferson Hospital in Charlottesville. And my first home was the slave quarters of what had been a plantation house in Keswick, uh,
Okay.
uh, right across from the golf course, the Keswick Country Club, which at the
Mm-hmm.
time was defunct. It wasn't owned by anybody. My grandfather taught me how to drive a car out on that golf course when I was 11 years old. Uh, but yeah, then yeah, my mother had it in her sights that her kids were going to go to the best schools, and that's how we ended up in Falls Church as well.
So the, would you, looking back on it, would you say they were the best schools? Like were they, I don't know if they did their thing for you, but
I was not a typical student in a good number of ways. I don't think. I think that they're fine schools. And so first things first. I think that the education system in America is kind of a joke. I think that it's a facade. I think that it's a sort of a 4 through 18-year-old babysitting program that they use just to make sure that all of the adults are free to work as much as possible. I don't feel like the education that you get in school has much bearing at all on your ability to be a productive citizen. Our unproductive citizens tend to come out of the same school systems as our productive citizens. I think whether or not you become a good citizen has a lot more to do with your home life
mm-hmm.
than it does your school life. And I feel like a lot of these children that are coming out of our educational system at 17 probably would have benefited more from entering into some kind of an apprenticeship program at 14, to learn a trade skill, or to become, to start down their career path at an earlier time, at a time when they could, where they could earn some money while they were, becoming more independent as a person, have a more productive role in society than being, somebody who sits in a classroom for 2/3 of the day and then gets drunk for a third, or whatever the hell they're going to do, but nothing useful. Because what are you going to do between 4 p.m. and midnight, on a weekday that when you're 16 years old? You're 16 years old. You could perfectly well be contributing to the betterment of the society that you live in, and be a part of your community. You can still spend time with your peers and that kind of thing. But this notion of 100% of people who are 16 years old should be sitting in a building together, doesn't who does that benefit? I don't think that it benefits anybody. I think that the kids who are going to go to college, for advanced education, you already know who those children are at 13, 14 years old. I think that, and I think that they should be doing that right at that age. I think they should be starting to figure out, what kind of majors do they want to pursue? What area of life are they interested? Are they interested in the arts? Are they interested in science? Are they, let's start getting you down that path. I don't think it's important to have people sit and memorize the periodic chart. I don't think it's important for people to sit and memorize, world capitals that are going to be different in 5 years. I don't think, and the fact that education has changed very little since the introduction of the smartphone and the internet, which provide answers to all of the rote memory questions that you could ever ask someone.
Yeah.
Well, you're not always going to have a calculator with you.
Actually,
Well, as it turns out, I have, 8 within reach right now, none of which are calculators because it's so easy to make a calculator out of anything. So that should have the internet should have fundamentally transformed what education was, and it didn't. And the fact that it didn't tells me that what education is a temporary holding place for children until we feel like it's time for them to go somewhere else. In as much as I think that's the case, I think that the Falls Church City Public Schools are fine schools. I think they did a very good job of holding children. Many of those children went on to extremely expensive colleges, which is the second part of what high schools are meant to do. So I think in that regard, the very words international baccalaureate are hard to pronounce and spell. So as a result, they must be better employees or voters, I think, than people who are not internationally baccalaureatized.
I remember being on a field trip to somewhere, to it was like a ropes course type of a place where we had gone, and we were all sitting at this long picnic table at lunch, and it was pretty clear that one side of the table was full of IB students.
Right.
And the other side of the table was full of other students. And I remember Chris Dazenbrook. I don't know if you remember him at all.
I remember his name.
Yeah. So he had transferred in somewhere around the 10th grade. And he was, I think he was a bit of a wild child. And I think he found himself in some of what he called the LD classes, and so
I found myself in those classes.
Yeah, he got us all basically chanting, one side of the table chanting, IB, LD, IB, LD. Like he was, yeah. I remember that to this day. The IB. Every time I hear International Baccalaureate, I think of Dr. Tomes, and I think of IB, LD.
IBLD. I should have been in that International Baccalaureate program when I was. It's funny because your mother and I just had a wonderful email conversation about this very thing. I'm quickly reestablishing my friendship with your mother.
That's awesome.
She is a wonderful woman. Beth, I love you. It's so nice to reconnect with you. And we did just have a conversation about this. I started out as a gifted and talented child. My mother was so pro-education. I was reading when I was 2 because she was just that. It's not because I was brilliant when I was 2. It's because my mother sat and pointed at words and said them to me over and over again until I could say them. And then, wow, my son can read. And it's like, well, yeah, he doesn't know how to do anything else, right? I can't, I can keep oatmeal in my mouth, but I can read, So I was ahead of my peers as a small child because my mom had tried to make sure that I was going to be as far ahead as possible at all times, which is really, don't do that to your children. It does not benefit them. It doesn't, if anything, it's going to, I turned into a snotty little boy because I thought I was better than everybody else because by all of the measures, who scores the highest on tests, I won the Thomas Jefferson had a grade 2 through 5 spelling bee every year. And every student in the school participated in this spelling bee. And I won that spelling bee in 2nd grade.
Wow.
And yeah. And the parents of the gifted and talented 5th graders were not.
They had to have been miffed by that.
They were, yeah. These are false church parents. So yes, how dare you deny the opportunity of my child? Like it's going to be on his fucking resume, right? When I was 10, so I won it in 2nd grade. The next year, it became the 5th grade spelling bee. Yeah. So And in second grade and in third grade, they had taken maybe 5 or 6 of us, gifted children, uh, and put us, we had some classes with other children, but most of our academic classes, we were just in a little room by ourselves, and they just gave us workbooks, right? So we busted through the second grade workbooks in about 3 weeks because they're easy. They're for 7-year-olds, right? And and then we got through the third grade workbooks very quickly. We made it partway through the fifth grade workbooks in that year. And then the next year we finished the fifth grade stuff and got through the sixth grade and started on seventh grade stuff, something like that. But then in fourth grade, they abandoned that program. And they tried a new program, which was, let's put the brilliant and gifted fourth graders in the same class as the LD fifth graders. And then we'll just teach them the same things, right? We'll take the slow fifth grade kids, who, by the way, were already like 2 years older than you because they'd already been held back a year in the first place. These are the kids that were smoking at the time, at 10, had already figured out everything you wanted to know about sex and alcohol, in Thomas Jefferson. And then here's us scrawny little nerd children, right, who really cared about our academics and really cared about our test scores, right? And we're in here with kids that are trading porn and
right.
showing off knives and penises to each other, and it just wasn't a good idea. And what happened was they wanted me to do homework, and I said I didn't have to because I'd already done that homework when I was in second grade. And they said, no, you need to do it. And I said, I did do it. And then the worst thing that happened was they capitulated and they said, all right, you just have to take the tests then. But if you don't do well on the tests, then you're going to have to do the homework. Well, at that point I'd won, and all I did was just show up and fuck around and then ace tests because the tests were easy for me. I knew this stuff. And my mother made sure I knew this stuff. So, but then, because I was a dick, I made sure all my friends knew that I didn't have to do any homework. Right?
Rubbing it in.
Yeah. So guess who suddenly didn't have friends anymore? Right. So now I don't have friends. I've got a couple friends, but it's now my friends are the new kids who just arrived, not the kids that I used to play soccer with, and and who were still the popular crowd. They didn't really spend time with. I didn't get invited to birthday parties anymore. I got kind of left off of that team. They still liked me when we played soccer because I was very good at soccer. But they didn't like my attitude about anything else in life because I was a jerk. And then in fifth grade, they said I have to do homework. And I said, well, you didn't make me do homework last year. And so they didn't make me do homework in fifth grade either. But they made it very clear. They said, when you get to sixth grade, you're going to go to George Mason, and they don't play. They will fail you.
They used to try to scare the shit out of you when you were transferring from TJ to Mason from fifth grade to sixth grade. They would try fear of God type stuff. Like it's a whole different thing over there.
Like you're getting sent to prison. Right. Watch cornhole, boy. You're going to Mason. It was very much. This is the real world now. You're 11. Yeah. So sure enough, I got to sixth grade, and in sixth grade they had the advanced kids, which now included not just the 4 or 5 kids that I'd been in a program with, but included that upper third of children that were considered sort of the advanced group, some of whom would become the IB students. But the advanced children got to participate in pre-algebra. Now, I already knew algebra because my mother taught me algebra when I was like 8. And so we did algebra at home all the time. Algebra was nothing to me. But they didn't put me in the pre-algebra class because I didn't do my homework. And so that was their first, let's tough love him into submission. right? The goal of the school is less about how much can we educate this child. A lot of it is about, can we control this child? Can the child accept that they need to do what I tell them to do? And I couldn't, because my mother, as much as she was very pro, learning about things, was also fucking revolutionary. She could not stand, the government. Uh, Mom's a little fucking crazy. God rest her. She passed away in 2009. But yeah, you know, you could see her plotting to blow up a government building. She's she was that level crazy. So they didn't put me in the advanced class, and that offended me. And it made me feel shame and hurt, because I was no longer part of the competition, for who's the smartest kid in the class. I wasn't allowed to compete, and at that point, I didn't know what to do. If I can't be the smartest kid, what am I doing? And so I started not doing anything, and they did fail me. And then the next year, they put me in a class called New Horizons, which was for the learning disabled. I'm sitting in this classroom with kids who can't read,
Hmm.
some of whom were very nice children, many of whom had serious behavioral problems. Um, and I'm sitting there with these people, and I'm 12. My parents separated the next year, so we had problems going on in the house at the time as well, and adolescence, and the girls that I used to hang out with suddenly had makeup and breasts and didn't want to spend time with me anymore, and the kids who had been my friends when I was growing up didn't like me anymore because I was a jerk about and I couldn't compete, and so I just gave up, and I stopped going to school, started failing everything. Eventually, after my junior year, they just suggested I drop. I had a 0.7 grade point average, and they said, we think you should just drop out, get your GED, and go to community college. And so I said, see ya. I got my GED. I signed up for community college. I think I went twice, and then I was like, "What the fuck am I going to school for? I've got a life to lead," and so off I went. But so I was not a good test case for, is it a good school system?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I,
yeah.
I knew you were smart back then. You had a computer at your house. So you were the only people I knew that had a computer. And not only did you have one, but you seemed to know how to use one. And I hadn't even
Did.
touched one before. It was
Yeah.
years later before my mom got us a computer. And she mainly got it for her because she was going back to school herself. And so I didn't really get to use a computer unless I was at your house and we were playing Leisure Suit Larry or something like that.
Yes. Leisure Suit Larry, as soon as my mother found out that I had Leisure Suit Larry at the age of 13, she grabbed me and the game and marched me back to Egghead Software where I bought it. And what are you doing selling this game to a 13-year-old child? It has. So first of all, everything in those games was pixelated because that's the best
Yes.
graphics you had. But then on top of that, they even censored the pixelation.
Right.
It wasn't that, but my mother was very Catholic, so yes, so she not only got our money back, but I got an Egghead T-shirt that I was very proud of and
Oh.
wore very often through my teenage years. I ended up working at that Egghead.
I did have a computer in my room, but it was just like a Commodore 64, if I remember that correctly. And
Sure.
it was not very capable of doing very much.
The Ripples had a Commodore. The EJ and Jimmy Ripple had a Commodore 64, and I want to say, some part of me thinks that Colin McInerney may have had a computer.
That sounds right.
And then there was I don't know if you knew Sean Fredericks. Do you remember Sean Fredericks?
No.
he was in and out. Like he lived in that neighborhood twice, but it may have been like bookending around you. He had a Commodore 64, but yeah, we had an IBM PC Junior, uh,
Yeah.
which was the big selling point of the PC Junior. Was that it had a wireless keyboard. It was the first wireless keyboard, which was connected by an infrared beam uh, that you
Like
had
a
to
remote
point,
control.
like a remote control, that you had to point a very specific dot on the CPU, and the and so the advertisements would feature like a family of four huddled around the keyboard, uh, which was, and then on the opposite side of a room was this 14-inch monitor, uh, that they and the look, you can use this computer, from clear over here.
Yeah.
There's no chance anybody could have seen a single goddamn thing that was happening on that monitor, because and yet, they looked very happy, and white and wealthy. But my grandmother bought us that computer because it would help us with our homework, which still don't know how that was the case. But somehow people made a connection between, oh yes, computers are good for learning.
Yeah.
Which, as soon as bulletin boards came out, the old BBSs, you dial up at the modem. We did learn a lot on bulletin boards, but nothing that you should be learning at 13.
I'm gonna throw a couple things out, kind of rapid fire, and see if you remember any of these the way I do.
Hit me, brother.
Did you play hide and seek with all the neighborhood kids there on Greenwich Street?
Of course, we played everything.
We played Spud in the yard next to ours, right? The open field that became a house at some point.
Aunt Edie's lot, we called that. That was Aunt Edie, was Edie Ehrman. I don't know if her last name was Ehrman. She was part of the Ehrman family, and she lived in that little white house that was on the other side of that empty field from you.
Yeah.
And that was, we played Spud. We played my favorite game that we played there was rugby soccer. Rugby soccer, if you recall, was pretty much I don't know. You can't say smear the queer anymore, but I don't know what else we're supposed to call it. But I guess I'm part of the LGBT community, and we've reclaimed the word queer, so it could be smear the queer again.
So you can say it, but I don't know if I can say it.
I don't even know that I should. So
I found out it was wrong to say it back in high school when Mrs. Tatum wouldn't allow that to be said. You can say you're going to go play tackle the person with the football, but you're not playing smear the queer. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another game we used to play, an inappropriate word in it that I never thought of until my mother pointed it out to me. Other people refer to the game as Ding Dong Ditch, where you go and basically ring somebody's doorbell and run away and then laugh at them as they, but it was called something else.
I do remember it was called something else, and neither one of us are going to say that at all.
So we're not going to say it. But what struck me was that my mother asked me what I was doing, and I told her, and I used that word, and my mother lit off on me, and I didn't understand why, and it's the power of context. I never in my life put that term, even though Shirley was spelled the same way, certainly phonetically sounded the same way, but it was like the word there and there. To me, it was like a different word. I didn't realize that I was saying the same word, because I just thought of it as a game about ringing doorbells and running away. I didn't have anything to do with people or their skin color.
Yeah.
And so as a result, when I told my mom, oh yes, we were doing this, and she, oh boy, and of course I immediately got it. It clicked when she was like, you can't say that. I was like, why? And she's like, are you kidding me? Why? And so, yeah. And then I was like, oh my God, like a light bulb, like, holy shit, I've been saying this the whole time. And it just never even struck me.
Yeah.
Just how powerful that could be, that you could do something that wrong and not know. But yes, rugby soccer was the object of the game. You could play with as many people as possible. You needed at least two. Uh, and your job is to keep possession of the soccer ball using only your feet and your knees or whatever. You can't use your hands. It's soccer. Everybody else's job is to separate you from the ball and take possession of it, and they don't have rules. So they're allowed to, tackle you, grab you by the waist, and throw you away from the ball. They still can't use their hands on the ball. They have to use their feet, but they can use their feet to just kick you as hard as possible in the stomach. Like they don't. There's nothing about it. And I remember my brother Peter, who was 4 years younger than me. He was always, tagging along, wanted to play. He got big enough that I want to play. Like, no, you're too little, you get hurt. But I want to play. And eventually, of course, mom would go, you let your brother play. All right, fine. And so he comes on the field and I just turn and hit him in the chest.
It's how you play.
He says, I lay on the ground. I couldn't breathe. I had no capacity for breathing. I thought I was going to die. I'm just laying there on the ground in the cold, and you guys are off, killing each other with the ball. Yeah. I'm just like, what happened? I was like, I don't know. You said you wanted to play. Just wham. But that was my favorite game we used to play in that side lot all the time. But yes, you can't rapid fire anything with me, because if you say 2 words, I'm going to say 4,000.
No, I got you. I've picked up on that. One of the things I was jealous about with you, you were always you and all of your brothers were always very skinny, and I was never very skinny. And so when Halloween would come around, my parents tightly controlled that bag of candy. Like we weren't allowed. We were allowed a little bit each day for weeks after Halloween is kind of how it went.
As it should have gone.
And I would come over to your house the day after Halloween, and there you are sitting with a significantly bigger bag of candy than I had.
Yeah.
In like a bathrobe, just watching TV, eating candy, piece of candy after candy, like just nonstop. I'm like, this is the life I want. Why can't I do this?
Yeah, that was the life I wanted as well. It was remarkable. My mother had no ability to control me, or my brothers. She did a better job on my brothers, but for some reason, we would go out and stay out. I remember waking people up at like 11:30 at night on Halloween.
Trick-or-treating still?
And they're like, it's 11:30. I'm like, I don't know. It's dark. It's been dark the whole time. We bring home the candy. And then I would just stay up all night eating candy. And I'd sit and watch television and just eat candy after candy. The problem is, Adam, I still do that. But like, the problem is I do, if I have a bag of candy in front of me, I will eat a bag of candy. And it's terrible. And I've never been, I was naturally thin as a child, but you don't stay that way forever if you sit on your ass and eat candy all day. Right. So now I'm 275 pounds. I've got a heart failure problem. I have colon cancer. I have worlds of problems, and part of that was because even though my mother was very smart, and even though she was an amazing cook and she could cook all kinds of great stuff, and she cooked healthy food, but she did not eat healthy herself. She died of sudden heart failure at 59 years old. She just fell over dead. She's 300 something pounds. And just congestive heart failure. Just your heart just couldn't do it anymore. And so even though she understood the ideas of what was healthy food and what was not healthy, she never had good eating hygiene, and thus never passed it to us either. And so I've struggled with weight, for the vast majority of my adult life. And I really wish that I had been given intelligent eating habits. My father was also thin, and he is still thin, but he was a general contractor, so he burned thousands upon thousands of calories
Yeah.
every day. So he would come home and just eat a whole bag of Fritos, and it didn't impact him because he'd already burnt it off.
Right.
But you know, I eat a whole bag of Fritos now. I don't. I may even have. Oh no, I've thrown away. I almost had an empty bag of Fritos to hold up and show you, but because I ate a bag of Fritos today because that's what I was taught, and I know that I shouldn't do it, but I have yet to conquer, the ability to tell myself to stop eating or to feel full. I don't feel full. I just want more food and calories. And I don't want good calories. I want ice cream and candy and cake and chips and pizza and bacon cheeseburgers. And that's what I want. And it's going to result in my dying younger than I should. But eating wise, it's been a fun life.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is that.
There's that. But yes, I can see where, as a child whose parents were trying to control things and portion you out, and who did have more weight struggles earlier in life.
I shudder to think how fat I would have been then, and probably would be if I'd even still be alive if that hadn't been happening if my mom didn't care that much about that. She recognized, I think, that I had the ability to eat a lot of food to my own detriment, and tried hard to help me temper that a little bit. And as a result, I've gone through wild swings in health and weight in my adult life. I've been 180 pounds down from 300. I've been back to 300. I've been down to 220, back to 300. Like, that's the wild swings I've experienced in the last 25, 30 years of being an adult. And it's, those wild swings aren't great. It's gonna impact me greatly at some point.
If I get through this cancer stuff, then you and I should find a way to try to partner up and help each other out.
Hold each other accountable?
Hold each other accountable, for 2 weeks until one of us doesn't.
That's how that'll work.
Yeah.
Till one of us has a bag of Fritos on our Zoom call.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going with the whole? Yeah.
Right.
This, by the way, is a bacon cheeseburger from Rutter's that I had from lunch on the way back from chemo.
So we're getting close to an hour and a half. You just mentioned chemo and cancer and all of that, and so the people that are listening to Knowing John, your show, will probably already understand what this is all about. The impetus for you wanting to record some stuff and put this out there, right?
Right.
My listeners, the last that they know of you is that we had a conversation last year, and where we had talked at length for the first time in many years.
Great.
We learned a lot of interesting things about you, and I get feedback from guys in my band. People have found that interview to be enlightening and enthralling and interesting the entire time. But they might not know what's going on with you health-wise these days. Do you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Sure. So, 2019, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. We did surgery, a colorectal partial colectomy, to remove, I think, 10 inches of colon from my intestinal tract. They had to route my, this is fun, they had to route my intestines at that point through my stomach, and into it was called an ostomy bag. So and so I could watch myself see whether or not I gave a shit about something.
Yeah,
pretty cool. It sort of is. It also a little gross. Yeah. The worst part of it was it would itch, and there's nothing you can do if because if you start scratching it, then the bandaging comes loose, and then the whole house stinks. Then you gotta go change stuff. There's nothing good about any of it. So I had that for about a year. I did chemotherapy during that year, and then they put my insides back together again. For a whole year, I had basically a non-functioning asshole. It did nothing. I couldn't even fart because nothing was routing down that way.
Wow.
It was for like contraband, I suppose, if I'd gone to prison, and nothing else. It didn't do anything. It was cobwebs were forming up there,
Yeah.
and I could have rented it out, I suppose, to somebody. Uh, Probably not. They don't encourage you to rent out, sublet. So anyway, they put me all back together, and I started shitting again where I'm supposed to, which was a great experience. I was potty training at the same time as my 2-year-old at the time. We were both learning how all that worked again.
You know, not many people get to have that exact shared experience, you know?
It was a bonding, very, very bonding experience when you're like, oh, hey, look what I did. You know, oh, yeah, look at this. You know, wow, Daddy, that's a lot. You know, so, sure.
Whole bag of Fritos.
Sure, bag of Fritos and a bacon cheeseburger will get it done. Anyway, went through the chemo, had the surgeries, got put together, and then they, performed some scans, and they said, we're not seeing any signs. Let's give it a couple months. And so a couple months later, they did another scan, and they said, we don't see anything. And they declared me cancer-free, which was very exciting. I didn't get to ring a bell. They don't, a lot of places don't do the bell anymore.
You mean like at a bar when somebody gives a big tip and the bartender goes and rings the bell? That kind of a bell?
Ringing the bell at the bar means that you've bought a round for everybody.
Yeah, so something like that.
Yes, but a big tip is going to buying everyone a drink. At any rate, yes. It used to be that when you got declared cancer-free, you finished your last chemo treatment, you would ring this bell and everybody would clap for you, and like the whole staff would be there and walk you out. And some places still do that. Ron Rivera, when he finished his cancer, there's you can see the him ringing the bell, and everybody's, the staff are all there clapping.
Yeah.
And I felt a little gypped because I had no bell. But it turns out they say they don't advise that cancer centers do that anymore for a couple reasons. One is, there are people there who are terminal, who are never going to get to ring that bell. And listening to other people ring the bell, pretty fucking downer. And then the other thing is, apparently, the ringing the bell moment becomes like this memory snapshot part of your life. You remember ringing the bell, but you don't end up. It turns out that something like 83% of people who rang the bell years later did not associate that bell ringing memory moment snapshot with beating cancer. They associated it with the cancer center, the chemo, the treatments, the hair loss, the nausea and diarrhea and poisoning. So it was that they had this snapshot moment in their life that just brought everything bad back every time they thought of it. So they're now advising that you don't have the bell. So I'm pretty glad that I don't have the bell. But at any rate, if there had been a bell, I would have rung it because I was cancer-free. I didn't have any more chemo. They said, we'll see you in a year for a routine follow-up, scan. Oh, great. And so a few months passed, and I had, from all these massive surgeries in my abdomen, I have a couple of hernias that are popping out. So a hernia is when part of your intestinal tract pops through your abdominal wall. Yeah. It's still behind the skin. So it's not like like an octopus is coming out of your belly. But it's a little gross and it sounds squishy. And it can be painful, right? Gas can get trapped, food can get trapped, it can become strangulated, which is an immediate problem. So you spend time pushing it back in, and you want to get those fixed. So my doctor referred me to a surgeon. Go talk to this guy, and he'll get you hooked up to fix your hernias. This was last summer. So I met with him, and he poked and prodded and said, yeah, we can fix these. They're not so bad. Let's schedule you for some scans so we can see the size of the hernias and the shape. Went in and did the scans, met with him in October of last year. And he said, I am really sorry to inform you of this. Let me walk you through the scans. Here are the hernias, and here's the shape of the hernia. This is definitely a fixable hernia. The problem is, if you can continue deeper into the scan, this is a cluster of lymph node cells that are significantly larger than they should be. And so, in addition to being the hernia guy, I'm also an oncologist. That's cancer. And so we're going to need to schedule you for more tests to get it taken care of. I'm very, very sorry to tell you this. And I said, it's okay. I appreciate you telling me this, because now that I know that it's there, we can do something about it. He said, yeah, that's right. That's good attitude. So I went and got the test done. They did some biopsies and took a look at it. Turns out that it was indeed cancer. In fact, they found another couple lymph nodes up by my heart, behind my heart, that have cancer. Those ones they can't operate on. They just can't get to it. And the ones in the bottom they can't operate on because they're alongside a major artery. So I went from cancer-free to suddenly having a terminal cancer diagnosis. And when I was first diagnosed with cancer, the stage 3, in the beginning, the doctor gave me my prognosis was in the form of the 5-year life expectancy for your type of cancer is 70%. Which is pretty good. You roll a 10-sider, 1 through 7, you're good to go. I'll take, it's pretty good odds.
Yeah.
You want better odds. But as somebody who's played lots of dice games, that's not bad. Right. I've made a career out of games. 70%, let's do that. It's easy peasy. That's a field goal. So he said the life expectancy, or the 5-year survival rate is around 70%. He says, but bear in mind that 70% number includes people who were diagnosed at 95. People who, by the time we found that cancer, it's so advanced there's nothing we can do about it. It includes people who refuse treatment. It includes people who learn of their diagnosis and commit suicide. It includes, right? So, at the time I was 46. He said, I think that, so 70%, it's going to be higher than 70% for you because you're otherwise healthy, you're young. I assume you're going to get treated and not kill yourself, and all these things. So I felt pretty good about that first round of cancer, as much as you feel good about having cancer. The second time when I went in with the terminal diagnosis, he said, have you, here's what it is, and you've got these tumors, blah 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 blah. Do you have any questions for me? And I said, no, not really. And he said, well, I imagine you want to know about life expectancy. So life expectancy is a very different term than 5-year survival rate. Yeah. So he said the life expectancy for somebody with your stage of cancer in this particular scenario is 30 months. Wow. And I said, okay. And that's 30 months, including, chemo treatments throughout those 30 months. He said at this stage, we don't know. So I'm going to refer you to Johns Hopkins because they know more than I do about what we can do with this. Can you hear my baby?
I can hear your baby.
Everybody can hear my baby.
That's right. Your baby's on the podcast.
Yeah, podcasting at an early age. And he's going to do well in podcasting because, as you can hear, he's naturally angry. And angry podcasters just get more clicks, right? Because
totally. I have my podcast is generally fairly happy. I don't get that many listeners. So
well, that's what it is. If you would just get pissed off about stuff,
I need to.
And then make wildly controversial statements that you can't back up. That's the other thing that, because listen to what this asshole said. share.
Yes. Share. That's $1 billion contract with Spotify. Done.
And that's the model today, right? It's, I'm just going to say something so asininely stupid and outlandish and easily refutable that, your aunt living in the sticks can refute it and share with her friends about how stupid I am. and then everybody's going to listen.
Yep.
And it's such a horrible model, but that's where we live today.
Yeah.
So at any rate, uh, he said, this is 30 months is with all of the treatment and chemo and everything. And we're not, and it's not, all we can do with the chemotherapy is manage it. We're not going to be able to cure this. We're just going to be able to manage it. And what he means by that is we can find a chemotherapy treatment that will target the cancer and maybe stop it from growing, but the cancer will evolve. It will find a way around that treatment. And, at that point, maybe we find another treatment, and we keep doing that until we run out. And it seems the median length of time that people live is 30 months. So at that point, I had some very frank and surreal conversations with my wife, and with my boss, and with myself, and thought about, well, what does that actually look like for my wife and my children? It's 30 months of me going back and forth to the cancer center, going through chemo and slowly deteriorating, and occasionally getting good news that will inevitably be followed up by bad news and worse news. And at the end of it, I'm going to die. And along the way, we're going to be making memories of me throwing up, shitting myself in bed, losing all my hair, losing my weight, becoming a frail, undead looking thing, and then dying anyway. And that'll take 30 months, or if we're lucky, it'll take even longer. and I thought this seems like a really good deal for the healthcare industry. How long can we milk this cow? Does he have any money left? Let's just keep going. It doesn't seem like a good scenario for me, my children, my wife, my friends, people who love me. I don't see where this is good for anyone. Alternatively, if I don't take treatments, if I don't go through chemo, maybe I get 6 months. I don't know. It's, most likely the next place that this cancer goes is my liver, followed by my peritoneum or something like that. The lining,
peritoneum.
Peritoneum, I think, the lining of my intestinal wall, which is already Swiss cheese. Anyway, and then after that, my bones is where this, and then after that, it doesn't matter. So it would be between that period of time, whenever I happen to be thinking this, and the time basically my liver starts shutting down, would be. But during that time, I could fly anywhere I wanted. I could go see and spend time with my boys in Singapore. I could go see friends in Canada. I could go see Europe if I wanted to, as I'd never been, and I always, wanted to. I've been to England, but I haven't been on the continent. I'd never been in the Caribbean. I'd love to put my feet in the water there. There are places I would like to go, and memories I would like to make with people I care about. And to me, that sounded like a far more acceptable path forward than let's see how long I can tolerate poison until I die. Hardly comparable. So I made that decision. I said, you know what? I'm done with it. I had done already, I think, 2 or 3
Chemo sessions
of chemo. Yeah. So, I don't know, like 2 months worth. And, and at that point I got COVID. So my last chemo session, I had COVID and chemo. Yeah, your mom didn't think I was going to make it through the COVID.
Oh, I know. My gosh. COVID on top of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. She told me that. She said, when I heard you got COVID, I thought that was it. I did, nope. The first time that I had the chemo back in 2019, I caught pneumonia, and I became septic at the same time that I was going through chemo. So septic's like a blood infection.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all of that at the same time. Didn't kill me. Now in January, I had chemo and COVID at the same time. Still didn't kill me. So they have yet to come up with a combination of diseases and problems that does the trick. But so I did that. I had done that 2 months, and then I had met with my doctor, and and he said, yeah, 6 months is probably a reasonable expectation for how long you could make it without. And he was very supportive. He says, I totally support your decision to stop the treatments. I think, it's your life. It's your decision if you want to prioritize quality of living for a shorter period of time. Some people prioritize longevity, right? For some people, it's about how long can I live is the only thing they care about, and they'll do anything to live longer, as shitty as it might.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, if you're gonna tell me I'm dead either way, I don't see why it's better for me to die, 2 years later and have just rotted in bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I had made that decision, and I came to peace with that decision, and I went public with that decision too. I said, here's the deal. I'm done with this. Let's go have 6 great months. See you guys in Austin in April. We'll kick off the tour. I bought Formula One tickets in Austria. Go see in July. Should I be around in July? And should there still be in Austria in July? Then we'll go see Formula One with my dad. I'm going to take my wife and kids, and we'll go, 2 of my kids anyway, we'll go to Vienna and see that. So I've got some plans that I'm making. And then, and I had started practicing what I referred to as radical acceptance, which was, you know what? I'm going to die. Let's stop worrying about that. That's an inevitability. That's not something that I need to stress about because I can't control how that happens. I can't control what happens after that happens. I can prepare for it, right? Make sure my wife is taken care of financially, things like this. But I can't stop it. That train's coming. So, all right, I'm not going to worry about the train then. I know the train's going to hit me. Meantime, what am I doing between now and the time the train runs me over? So let's focus on that and enjoy the shit out of it. So I was good with that. A little alarmingly good with it for some people. But, people get weird about death.
My mom expressed concern about that.
Yeah?
Yeah. No,
your mom loves me and cares about me. Can I tell you again how appreciative I am of that? Your mom's surprised. I had no idea. I knew that she was going back to school, like tangentially in my mind. Oh, Adam's mom is studying. She's going to school. That was the extent of it, right? Okay, Adam's mom is going to school. That's cool. Good for her. Sounds like a thing. Had no idea that she then went on 16 years in the service of the school. Worked with special ed kids, did she?
Yeah, she was a paraprofessional, so she worked with teachers, and specifically she would be assigned kids that needed extra attention, help throughout the day, stuff like that.
Unbelievable.
She went back to school when I was in high school, though, and that she got her degree in Parks and Recreation, and she worked at the community center for a long time.
Yes, I knew that she worked at the community center. Yeah, I remember her there. She took care of me when I broke my finger one time. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Don't break your finger; it hurts.
I've broken 2 fingers.
Good. This one?
Nope, not that one. Both of those still work just fine.
These fingers are wrong. This finger's great. Yes. So, at any rate, I began practicing what I had termed for myself as radical acceptance, and then found out from my therapist that that's an actual thing, radical acceptance, and it's a fairly hot term these days, and it's exactly what I said it was. Just accept it and stop. Don't let it be a source of. So if you start thinking about it, just do something else. Go take a shower. Fuck it, do something.
Right.
Don't worry about it. And it sounds flippant when I say it like that, but because it's hard to learn how to do. But somehow I've got a gift for not giving a fuck, and so it's really it's a practice skill. And as a result, I'm very good at radical acceptance. But it does concern people when you're like, I'm okay with dying. They're like, well, you shouldn't be. It's like, well, if it's going to happen, what good does it do me to not be okay with it?
Right.
What good does it do anybody? And people need to grieve, but I don't need to grieve. Once I'm dead, I won't be there to grieve. So somebody else can grieve. I still grieve things, but that's another conversation. At any rate, I had just come to this brilliant state of acceptance when I met with my doctor again, and he said, guess what? I know that you've decided to forego the treatments, but your most recent scans show that the chemo that we're doing is working really well, and your tumors are shrinking significantly.
What?
And I said, okay, but you told me that that's going to happen some, and that at some point the cancer's going to mutate around that shit anyway. And he said, yeah, and that's probably what's going to happen. But there is some possibility that maybe if we can shrink them enough, we can get like a super specialist surgeon at Johns Hopkins to perform a surgery to get rid of this stuff. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, like it's not like, hey, good news, we're going to cure you. That can, I still have a terminal diagnosis. I am still dying. But now there is some crack of light, at the edge of the door that maybe there is some way, if this confluence of events comes together in just the right way. So I said, all right, well, we need to understand more about that. But in the meantime, I'll sure as shit go back on the chemo. Let's keep shrinking it. And if it is possible that somebody can open me up again and figure this shit out, then, fantastic. And if not, I haven't lost anything by trying. I've just delayed when my 6 months starts, really. And I'm okay with that, so that's where I am now.
So when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, when we were talking about getting you set up with the podcasting gear, if I remember correctly, you were in the middle of, or maybe recovering from COVID, and in the middle of radical acceptance. Like this was you hadn't gotten to where you are now yet.
No, I was done with chemo at that point. I had no intention of returning to chemo.
And I remember asking you then, how do you feel? Do you feel like you're dying and that you have cancer, and you physically feel awful? And you were like, no, I mean, other than having COVID, other than that, you felt kind of normal.
Don't break your fingers. Don't get COVID. It sucks.
Right. Well, how about now? How are you feeling now?
Today, I feel pretty good. I had to spend time in the cancer center this morning up at Apple Hill in New York. And because but I was up there getting hydration treatments just to keep my body full of fluid, and that helps me stay strong. It helps me fight off nausea. But right now I'm on, I guess it would be what do we have on Wednesday? It's day 9 of my most recent chemo treatment, which started 9 days ago, last Monday. The first 3 days, I have a chemo pump on me. So I go in and they give me lots of steroids and nausea meds. And then I spend 2 days at home wearing a pump that's attached to a vein that goes into my heart. And they pump the chemo meds into me. And then I go back to the cancer center and they detach the pump and give me hydration. Then I am nauseous and exhausted for about 3 days. And that's what we're trying to work on right now, is reducing the nausea of that period. And we did, I think the medications they gave me this time, I think did a good job with the nausea. But then days 6 and 7 are heavy diarrhea days, which are dangerous for me on a number of. I lose lots of fluids. I lose lots of weight. The loss of fluids has residual impacts in my ability to fight off diseases and things of that nature. So they really don't want me to have diarrhea. And yet my body is doing everything it knows how to do to reject the poison they're putting into me.
Yeah.
So the throwing up, the diarrhea, that, don't eat any food, this kind of thing. So I lost, I think, like 11 pounds in 3 days. And so those days were awful. And then I went in on Monday to go get hydration. Yesterday felt pretty good. Today did hydration again. I feel good today. Tomorrow I have off. Friday I go in again to meet with my doctor. And then we start the process again on Monday. So every 2 weeks it's load me up with poison. And then I will meet with my doctor every 2 weeks to see what can we do to mitigate some of these side effects to make quality of life more acceptable while I'm going through this. And then every few months we'll do a scan to see what's the impact on the tumors. So how's that side of the battle going? But the best thing that I can do right now is allow the medication and the doctors to buy them time to figure out, is there a surgical solution if these get small enough? Because I don't even know if that's true, right? Like, my doctor told me it was possible, but I haven't heard that from
the super surgeon who could actually do that.
Right, Johns Hopkins or Sloan Memorial Kettering or any of these places that are, top of the nation cancer centers that I've been in touch with, and they were pessimistic. They said, we can't solve this. What they're doing is the right thing. But, maybe if they look at this and say, oh yeah, if it does slim it down that much, maybe we can do, I'd like to hear that from the people who would be doing it. I do trust my doctor. He's an excellent doctor. But he also refers to, we want you to talk to the people who do the research. Those guys are on the cutting edge, bleeding edge every day.
Yeah.
I'm running a cancer center. I'm putting chemo in people, but when it gets crazy, we go to those guys.
Yeah.
And apparently now I'm at crazy level.
So are you going to be able to continue on with your plans that you had started making when you were in radical acceptance phase, or are you going to have to adjust those plans?
My plan right now is to stick with my plans. I'm going to go down to, here's something that people do on podcasts. I'll be in Austin April 9th and 10th.
Oh yeah. Give us your plugs. Give us your plugs.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. You'll see me at Bethany's house.
You're not going to be at you're going to be at Magooby's comedy club.
I'll tell you something about Magooby's Comedy Club. It is across the parking lot from my office. Do you know Magooby's up in Baltimore?
I've heard that name. I mean, I've done stand-up comedy a bunch. So Magooby's is a club that I'm not at that level. Probably never will be, but I've certainly heard of it many times.
I can get you into open mic at Magooby's.
Yeah.
I can definitely get you into open mic at Magooby's because I could do open mic at Magooby's. Magooby's is run by a guy named Andrew Unger. It's co-owned by him and his brother Mark Unger. Mark Unger was offering a storytelling workshop at Magooby's, and I signed up for it. And I went over, and I only attended maybe 3 or 4 of the classes, but I became friends with Mark. It was too late in the day. It ran from like 7 to 10 p.m. And then I had to drive back up to Pennsylvania afterward. It was too much. I've got children. So I stopped doing it. Also, I got cancer. But Mark one day asked me, he said, hey, do you think that there's a possibility that there could be a video game about owning a comedy club? And I said, sure. You make a video game about anything. In fact, there's a whole genre of video games about owning a restaurant, right? And you start off with this shitty little shack and you upgrade your shit. And you could totally do that with a comedy club, or, make your stage better, have a better green room space, to try to attract better talent, upgrade your promotion. By 3 minutes in the conversation, I already have a design in my mind because it's a blueprint, right? It's been done a billion times.
Yeah.
And he said, that's awesome. Let's talk about that. And so we started talking, and then we quickly realized, I thought, that game's makeable. But what nobody has done a good job of is a game where you're a comic, right? Where's the video game about being a comedian trying to land gigs, trying to make a name for yourself? Can you go on to become a writer somewhere, or can you get a sitcom, or can you become a Dave Letterman, Jay Leno, TV show host sort of person? Will you be, what can you movie star Kevin Hart sort of thing, or Paula Poundstone on NPR? What are you going to do? And he liked that idea, but but since Mark himself was a comic in the 90s and still does stand up from time to time, that to him wasn't very exciting, right? Because that's his life.
Right.
But to me, a basketball game might not be very exciting to Michael Jordan, but it would be to me. So I thought that's
something you can't naturally do on your own in real life. That's kind of what video games allow you to do virtually.
That's right. So our conversations, as we kept conversing, and it was just Mark and I for quite some time, and the game kept kind of evolving. Well, what if you could be an owner or a comic, or what if you could be a comic who, if you make enough money, then owning a club is, something you can do with that money, right? You can open your own club and then start playing that track. Or, what if it's an MMO world where there are people who are playing as agents and managers, and, some people are owning clubs and other people are comedians, and you're trying to compete over the same audience market share. And, what about Twitter, and how does that play into the, and so what we ended up doing was we ended up coming up with Mark explains it way better than I do, because Mark has gone on. He's a playwright. He's a TV director and actor. There's a show called Thespian that you can get on Amazon. That is, I think they're filming their third season of it now. And he writes it with his wife and produces it, and he stars in it. And it's about a comic who's kind of washed up, and he's trying to become, a legitimate actor, and he's trying to, book gigs, and it's based in Baltimore. And it's a good show. And what I like about it is the episodes are like 15, 20 minutes. So you don't get bogged. You're like, not like locked in. But Mark and I have become friends now, and we've built a small team of people that we are now building a game. It's an adventure game. You're playing as a comic. And I'm not going to give too much of it away because he'll get mad at me. But part of it is about trying to land gigs, and it's sort of you mentioned Leisure Suit Larry. It's going to look better, but
less pixelated, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's not. Oh my God, I should probably pick up this empty bottle because I'm going to need it later to that kind of shit. But there will be some really cool concepts in there about that are authentic to the experience of identifying funny things and writing jokes and creating sets and making, and reading audiences, right? And are the jokes that you thought were going to land with this group actually going to land with this group? Are you, should you, change course and kind of wing it midstream? That's risky.
Yeah.
How do you handle hecklers? How do you handle, guys that offer you $200 to do a set, and then when you've done the set, they're like, yeah, it was only worth 120. Well, it's not my fault that you didn't fucking get anybody there to buy beer from you, right? Don't, fucking pay me. These kinds of things. And, do you trust this guy to be your manager? Do you, is this promoter that you found worth of shit? There's that side of things. But then there's another, more supernatural side of things to the story as well, which makes it a very compelling story. Yes. What's cool about this is, again, Mark's a very creative individual, playwright, and he thinks about things the way that a television show, like a camera, like a director of a film, thinks about things. He thinks visually in terms of framing shots, and here's an advancing story, and stuff like that. I'm a video game guy, right? I'm thinking about, is it compelling gameplay? He has no video game experience. I have no television experience. But between the two of us, I think we've come up with a really cool idea. So that's a side project that I'm sort of working on. So you mentioned Magoobies.
Oh, I mean, holy shit, dude. I mean,
Look what happened.
that was a throwaway comment because you sounded like you were doing that typical podcast thing where you plug your dates, right?
And you picked Magoobies out of a hat.
I came up with the funniest sounding name for a comedy club that I've heard of, right? And I always think Magoobies. It's just a great name for a comedy club.
Fantastic name.
It's fantastic, and somehow you have that story that goes with that. That's incredible.
I've got a Magoobies story. Of course I have. Everybody worth their damn has a Magoobies story.
That's so great. So I think we were talking about whether you were going to continue on with your plan, and it sounds like maybe with some modifications, but generally, yes.
My goal and aim is to live my life and stick to the plan. There will be opportunities for me to negotiate. It's my healthcare, right? So if I say, you know what, I recognize that things are shrinking, it's more important to me right now to go spend time with these people or to go do this thing that I've been, I need, I really love these people. I like to see them. I like to see my sons. I'd like to see your, so I may say, I'm just going to skip this. I'm going to take this treatment off. We'll schedule for the next one. And maybe that means that the tumors grow a little bit in the meantime. Now, my doctor will certainly tell me if the doctor comes back and says, the downside of that is that, that closes the window on you for a surgery, then I'll reschedule. I'll call it off. I'll take that hit. But that certainly isn't going to be, he doesn't benefit from telling me not to, to do things. So we're going to be, honest with each other and open and communicate. And the nice thing about being a professional game producer is I have these conversations all the fucking time, right? This is what I do. So here's what I want to get done. Here are the parameters within which I can do it. Here's where I have wiggle room to negotiate. Here's where I don't. And ultimately, I'm the person that owns the outcome. So I'm also the customer in this, scenario. And so that gives me lots of power. So we'll do ultimately what I want to do. But I respect the shit out of my medical team. And if they tell me, here's what happens if you turn this particular treatment down, then that will factor heavily in my decision making, and I'm going to do ultimately what I think is best.
Wow. So, for my listeners who are just now hearing all of this and who have just sat through 2 hours because I'm not going to edit much of this out, right? There's that part where our phone connection wasn't great, but
I was talking through that part, so I'm keeping that in.
I was talking through it as well, so maybe we'll both keep that in.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Let's just do it. Let's just not edit anything out of this entire thing.
That's easy.
That is pretty easy. But how can my listeners follow you if they're interested in doing so?
Yes.
And contribute to helping you do what you're doing and all of that.
Sure. Thank you. So I set up on advice of my my friends. What I had been doing was journaling all of my thoughts on Facebook, and I was making very long Facebook posts. And part of the reason I did that is because I wanted these things to exist somewhere in cyberspace so that my children could find them later. And somebody pulled me aside virtually and said, you know how hard it's going to be for your kids to find all of the correct Facebook posts, years from now. Let's fast forward 20 years, right? Facebook's gone. It's Meta. It's been bought twice. It's available on an internet archive somewhere, maybe. And how are they going to, know where to go and what to look for? So what you need to do is find a way to collect these and publish them. Ideally in a book form, because that would make the most sense. But you should also record. You should record things for each of your children's birthdays for the rest of their lives. That's a lot of work. I love children. I love you. If it's your birthday, happy birthday from Daddy. But I'm not going to record a separate. You're 47 now, and let me tell you what that means. Yes, that's not gonna happen. But I did want them to get the idea of, being like if they were present for this conversation, right? Which virtually, if they're listening now to what we're saying right now, then they are present, right? They're sitting somewhere. They're listening to me. They're listening to you. They know what we're talking about. The fact that it's not March 9th, 2022 for them is less relevant than the fact that they could well be sitting next to their dad having a conversation with an old friend of his, from the hood back in the day. So I wanted them to have that experience. And kids, you're welcome for... I know you're saying thank you, Daddy, for thinking of this, Daddy. You're a genius, Daddy. I wish, yeah, all of the things. So at any rate, I decided what I would do, and I decided it because somebody said you should do this. It was create a Patreon site where I could collect all of these text missives and recordings in one place, and maybe tag them or sort them chronologically or something like that, maybe categorize somehow so they can get to it. The other thing that my friend said was, people want to support you. There are people who want to give you money. So there are two ways you can do that. One is you can hit me up on PayPal, which is john.worrell@gmail.com. Having cancer does get expensive. Having cancer when you want to travel all over the place and eat Fritos is even more expensive. Money is, I'm not going to turn it down. So thank you there. The Patreon site is patreon.com/knowingjohn, all one word, no hyphens or anything like that, Knowing John. And on the Patreon site, if you choose to donate through the Patreon site or contribute through that site, bear in mind that that's a monthly thing. So if you donated $200 through PayPal, I'm getting $200. That's really nice of you. If you put $200 down on Patreon, I'm getting $200 from you every month. Now, with that said, I'm also not a dick. So if thank you if you do that. But if you then turn around and say, "Holy shit, I just gave you $200 more. I didn't mean to do that," I will happily give you $200 back, or if you or whatever you want to do. So
I saw your post on Facebook or on Patreon, wherever it was, that I saw that today. And because of their post, I went into my Patreon and I was like, oh, I'm still subscribing to that? I don't even pay any attention. I'm not interested in that anymore. So I canceled some subscriptions on Patreon that I was just simply not using or interested in anymore. So thank you. You just saved me a couple bucks a month.
To you, I say you're welcome. And to, you're the people that you used to patronize, I'm sorry. But yeah, I did, I want to make sure nothing on Patreon that I put there is gated behind being a patron or a subscriber or anything like that. It's not the purpose. I don't put it there. I'm not trying to build an audience. I'm not trying to turn this into my job or make a lot of money or anything along those lines. I do want to give people an avenue to contribute because it does help. And I'm very appreciative of the people who do, including you, Adam. Thank you very much. But it's by no means a requirement or even a pressure situation. So go there, read all the shit, listen to all the stuff, leave comments, have a blast. Don't give me a nickel. I'm totally cool with that. And Adam, for my listeners who are on Patreon and listening right now, Tell them a little bit about your podcast and where they can listen to you.
So, Three Things with JR became I started doing this podcast right as I started working from home every day, and I had stopped. I wasn't able to go out and do stand-up comedy anymore. We were starting a podcast at work, Crutchfield the podcast, crutchfield.com/podcast, and so I all of a sudden had the gear to do a podcast right about the time that I had no other creative outlets. So it just seemed like a thing to do. And so Three Things with JR, it started off as, they were all 10 or 15 minute episodes of just three things that were on my mind, usually some sort of deep thought or epiphany, some sort of reference or recommendation from pop culture, music I'm listening to, something that's moving me. And then the third one was always just something stupid, dick jokes, potty humor, anything just ridiculous. Yeah. And then it evolved, and I kept getting better at the audio side of it, better at the editing side of it, better at making it sound good. And I started having guests on the show. You were one of the guests last year. And it's just been a lot of fun. And it's something I look forward to doing every week. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not making very much, so that's a good thing. I don't have a huge listenership, and I love the idea that I would like to have a bunch of listeners at some point, but I'm doing this because I want to, and I do get feedback from people, and that is always inspiring, and it makes me want to do it more. But if it grows into something huge, great. If not, that's fine too. But I think I've got things to say that people might like to listen to, and I've been told that that's true. So if you want to hear what I have to say on whatever's on my mind on any given week, it's Three Things with JR. You can find it wherever you get podcasts. Spotify is the place that I like to listen to mine.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've listened to quite a number of your podcasts at this point, because I'm not a podcast guy. First of all, I don't have a commute, so when the fuck am I going to listen to anything?
Right.
But then on top of that, it's just I want to spend my time doing things, and I'm not good at multitasking, so I'm not good at listening to somebody while I'm doing something else. I will either do one or the other, and then I will get frustrated with myself for not doing whatever one I did not do very well. And right. I like, if I'm playing a game and listening to a podcast, I find myself pausing the game and rewinding the pod. Wait, this sounds interesting. What the hell is he talking about? So I really have to, when I listen to your podcast or anybody's podcast, but mostly just yours, I have to just not be doing anything else. And sit and listen. But I like that experience because you are so welcoming and obviously for me, you're also a familiar presence, having featured in our our mutual childhoods. But Adam has got great takes on things. He comes from his family is sort of a I guess culturally diverse set of backgrounds that have kind of come together to formulate this island of Adam. So I think what I want to say is Adam's able to embody a variety of different perspectives when he comes up with his opinions and views on things. And you don't get a lot of that. Most people, this guy's a New Yorker. Okay, well, you know what a New Yorker is, and you already know how they feel about this. This guy's from Nashville. Okay, cool. Well, you don't get any of that with Adam. You never know quite where he's going to come at a topic from because he has this wealth of sort of diverse sets of perspectives that he could pull from any of them to formulate his opinion on something, and then experiences beyond that. And so, if you enjoy listening to good podcasts, then you should absolutely check us out.
Well, I'm honored that you would spend any time listening to my podcast with, relatively limited time left on this earth, John. The fact that you're spending any of it listening. That's right. Yeah, that's
an endorsement my heart, right there. I don't have much time, but it's yours.
So whoa.
How far have we gone here?
I'm looking at my audio software, and it seems to be
143.
Something is wrong. Oh. It seems to have stopped recording you a few minutes ago.
That's okay. Here's what I can do: is I can email you the Ableton project file.
Yeah, but if you don't email me the actual audio files, it won't work.
I can email you anything you want me.
I'm gonna hit stop right now and then record again to see if it starts picking you up.
Okay. My listeners are going to listen to you doing that.
Yeah. So I just hit stop on the record. I'm gonna go back and see what the last thing it recorded you saying was.
So I wanted them to have adequate kids.
Yeah, damn. So it stopped recording you
2 hours ago. I've still got.
No, it stopped recording you as you were explaining why you wanted to do the recording so your kids could hear you.
Oh goodness, that was a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I can send you all kinds of files, Adam.
I can. I'll do a Google Drive and I'll send you a link to that. If you can just upload it to that would certainly help because then I'm missing the last 10 minutes or so of you.
Yep, I got you.
So I am starting to hit record again, and then I want to see if it starts recording both of us.
All right. Do you want me to say check a bunch of times? Is that be helpful to you?
It's just not recording you. Oh, I see.
Oh, did you?
Okay, hold on.
Did you hit record on my track?
I just did again. Yeah, that button got flipped for some reason. So now I'm recording both of us again.
I don't like that button. That button that's, oh, by the way, did you want to record this one? Because that's what, so instead of hitting the record button, you have to hit the record button before you hit the record button.
Yeah, that's a bummer. So I'm missing about 10 minutes. I'll set up the Google Drive, and you know what? I'll send you mine, and you can send me yours. And if for any reason you need mine and I need yours, great. We've got them both. Well,
they were the best 10 minutes.
It was. It really was.
They were. I don't think the world's going to recover from those 10 minutes.
I know. So we should wrap this thing up, and then we should talk about logistics on this thing. So John, it's been almost 2.5 hours, and I feel like we got to maybe 3/4 of the things I had on my list to talk to you about. So we should probably plan on doing this again, maybe in a few months.
We should. And on top of that, I tend to dominate conversations. You may not have noticed that.
If you look at the audio files, there's a big, huge difference between your recording and mine recording.
Yeah. So I think the problem is that, the most fascinating subject in the world from my perspective is probably me. And so I will talk about myself to no end. I would love to give people a better opportunity to learn more about you. I know your listeners know you, but I think that mine should as well. So maybe let's do this again. And then next time I'm going to see if I'm capable of reeling myself in a little bit.
All right, we'll have you ask me questions. Because I too enjoy talking about myself, but that's not what this was. I was really wanting my listeners to know more about you, and that's the purpose of your podcast as well. So this wasn't about me, man.
I'll formulate some questions for next time. Most of the questions are going to be, what do you think about me?
I like it.
Yeah, that's good. I'll ask you, what's your favorite thing about me?
Right.
All right. I have a 7th question. What's your 7th favorite thing about me?
John, this has been great. We got to do it again for sure. We've got to get together in person sometime in the near future as well. I'm thinking maybe sometime in the summer.
I will be down in Northern Virginia. I'm saying at Magoobies. I will be in Northern Virginia. I'm trying to line it up for sometime in May.
Okay.
In probably in the fall stretch, like in Vienna, thereabouts.
Yeah.
So I will see if I can get you to that.
Definitely.
Plan on having a gathering type of thing.
I love it, man. That'd be great.
All right. Listen, I love you, man.
Let's consider this show over.
Let's do that. It's been a pleasure.
Well, the show's almost over. Hey, I'm back, closing out the show here. Patreon.com/knowingjohn to listen to and read all of his stuff. I want to close you out here with a recording of Baaba Seth at Fridays After 5 in 2009, featuring Mark Maynard, who hired both John and I to work at Crutchfield, and Jim Ralston on drums. You can also hear that sax player in the background, too. Over and out. Have a good one. See you next week.